Them used to call me a fool, boom, boom, but I was really half empty. I ain't got nowhere to go than those foolish things that are tempting me. Them used to call me a fool, boom, boom, but I was really half empty. I ain't got nowhere to go than them foolish things that are tempting me. Them used to call me a boom, boom, boom. Them used to call me a boom, boom, boom. Them used to call me a fool, boom. But I was really half empty, boom, 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 boom. I ain't got nowhere to go than them foolish things that are tempting me. Let's tap it, bro. Them used to call me a fool, bum, 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 but I was really half empty. And I don't got nowhere to go than them foolish things that are tempting me. Them used to call me a fool, boom, boom, but I was really half empty. So coping strategies, that's what we got nowadays. We got the coping strategies. Coping strategies. Coping strategy, coping strategy, boom, 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 coping strategy, boom, 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 coping strategy, it's a boom, 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 coping strategies, oh, whoa, 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 coping strategies, boom, 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 coping strategies, yeah, yeah, yeah. So what are coping strategies? Okay. Well, in unstultified terminology, coping strategies are classified in a few different roles. Okay. Number one is biological. Let's understand what is happening biologically when we are coping. Now you might say, well, what are we coping with, Mr. Dr. Louie? Well, coping with stress, trauma, these are the languages of the flesh. Everybody has a personal issue, and they'd say, no, well, Leon and Cassandra, Ida Mae and Clem all have 4 different grievances. Now, we can particularly partake grievances to that for which has been written, which is envy, jealousy, gluttony, lust, adultery. You know, there's the classic things that have happened since the dawn of mankind. And since the dawn of mankind, we have come up with coping strategies. Some of the old coping strategies is just this. Why are we humming? Do you know what this is right here? You know what this is connected to all right here? This is connected to your hearts and your lungs through thousands of nerves that are like wires, like a coaxial cable that's connecting from your brain stem through your mouth and nose area down to your lungs and your heart, then on to the guts, where it's checking out the mitochondria, seeing what's going on in the gut. So 80% of this communication from these wires, from these nerves, this vagus nerve, is saying, well, what is the lining down there like? What kind of environment is it? What kind of bacteria live there? What kind of nutrients are there? And what needs to happen in the brain to tell the rest of the body what we're going to do? So the brain is the one that's creating the stem, but only 20% of the communication is going from the brain. You see, the brain is mostly listening, okay? It's like the sensors going down there. So we have to be connected to see what's going on in the gut. And sometimes you might not know all the way. If your lining is being disrupted, this is more of a new phenomenon with a new diet, with things that are not brand new. There's always been spicy food and toxins. So there has been, but it hasn't been broadcast. Like what we say, we're doing broadcasting. We're casting broadly. These not only are we're going to talk about spells later on, but right now the coping strategy is on the biological processes, okay? So when something happens that you have to cope with, the way we react to it, when there is no responding and critical thinking, okay, we're responding with the sympathetic system, with the system of the amygdala, with the system that is primal, emotional, okay? This is ISIS. When you have, emotional, powerful, reactive, not thoughtful at all, ignorant, but so masterfully intelligent and beautifully intelligent. All the opposite factors. That's why we started off with the laws of duality and polarity, because those are the things on the macro and on the micro. So as we're going to see in space and with physics, just like when you have a ship, a rocket ship taking off, boom, when it's taking off and it breaks the speed of sound. You said, I thought sound was invisible, right? But it exists. So at a certain speed, boom, you're going to hear it. With every force, there's an opposite force. That's just how it is. But this goes for the human body. So a lot of people are like, we already know that, D. Well, that's why we're quantifying this on a level of us. I am that I am. Hey, I can hold my nose and feel the vibration. Humming. You used to think sometimes the old folks, and maybe see it in the movies, that they'd be humming while they're working. Well, try that. When you're in real graphic pain one day, as a painkiller, you can try your breathing techniques, because you're actually activating the chemicals that are, Now we breathe in. Now we're going to go breathe out. Now in and out. Okay? So that's changing my brain as I'm doing it. So now as I'm going to come back to just a speaking to you type of thing, that is actually changing the biology. It's sending different chemicals and different signals. So it's healing the gut. You can change your pH. Ooh, okay? Now, you can have a faster rhythm if you're going to go to war, if you're going to go in labor, if you're going to fight. There's more of an endurance one. So that's short, fast, adrenaline. Now after the adrenaline, you have the noradrenaline. Now the noradrenaline, that's a little bit more longer term. But we actually want to balance it. So we want to have a little cortisol, and a little bit of stress, a little bit of chaos. And then we have the parasympathetic system. That's the prefrontal cortex. That's the other side of the amygdala in the sympathetic system. So there's the sides that we're talking about today, and in the prefrontal cortex is the logical, the thoughtful. If somebody's all up in their brain, you might say, oh, they very stoic, you know? That's a man, a masculine. He ain't got no emotions or feelings. The woman's the feminine, she's the female. That's why it says she's Isis. Ra, that's the man. Israel. Israel. L is the God force. That's when we all one, connecting the masculine and the feminine. See, now I need a longer heel after a longer sprint. The farther that I go one way, the farther I got to go the other way. That's the pendulum. You want to have the key to everlasting life and endurance? Well, balance your breathing. Next time somebody be mean to you, they hurt your ego, they make you feel small. You know, I'm a very sensitive person on the inside. People hurt my feelings, you know. I've been in trouble sometimes in my life. But right now, we're going to talk about good things. So, murder and kill is the murder and kill for the $100 bills. People murder and they kill the ones that print the $100 bills, the ones that medicate us, the ones that send us to war. And they're going to keep doing it because it's our duty. It's not just our right. And they're not going to teach you this in school. They might skip over it, but it's our duty, the people's duty. If the people just sit around, then that means they're content. But if you're not content, it's not going to be about marching either. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make sense to waste your energy doing these type of things. You need to do something that's thoughtful, that's together with the feminine and the masculine, which means we're going to be thoughtful and listen to the emotions. And if the emotions say that something is destructive to our unalienable rights, which means our rights that cannot be taken by law. If something is destructive to our unalienable rights, it is our duty to alter or abolish that which is destructive to us or our rights that cannot be taken by law, like our free speech. They're able to communicate words that's vital to survival. That means we got to be able to communicate words that's vital to survival. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's free speech. When free speech is bought and paid for, that means it's abridged. That means our rights is abridged. Our unalienable rights is being taken from us. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How are we going to pursue happiness when we're being poisoned? And by poison, you could say, oh, that's one of the trap words to say you crazy. That's lexicon warfare, and we could study that one on another video. But there's a lexicon warfare, and that's war of the words, to put it shortly. So you could condemn a word, like when the word conspiracy was invented, was after JFK. As soon as JFK was, till this day, not fully disclosed, and people had ideas to say, hey, you know what? I don't buy that story. They say, oh, okay, we're going to label you a conspiracy theorist, and that's what we're going to use media for. Because if you really know history, that's been the way to broadcast a vision. Somebody would have to broadcast a vision or whisper into somebody's ear a vision, or say it to 2 people or 3 people, just to be opposite, to show you that the opposite is okay, and it's not okay. It's murder and kill, and it's life everlasting. So we all know what time it is. It's time to do beautiful things and create paradise. That is to what we shall focus our attention on, creating paradise. And we can talk a lot about what is that paradise, but the reason that I use the word paradise, I want to use it in the context from the ancient translations of the original promise of God thousands of years ago that's been written that says we born. Is we not born as a child into paradise? We got the food, we're there, we're warmth, we got everything. We can't live on our own, but we're taken care of because we take care of each other because we're humans. That's what humans do. That's how we have survived for millions of years. And for the people that's not on this level of intuition and imagination, we want to agree to 300,000 years because that's what we're like, oh, 300,000 years. We seen somebody, they just popped out of nowhere. Or they developed from the ocean, that's fine. But I'm telling you, I don't buy it. Okay, there's more to it than that. But like I said, that's another video. Today, we're talking about coping strategies, biological coping strategies. And these biological coping strategies can be controlled by you. You can control your own biological, your healing system, your terrain, and we can get into that more. Pasteurizing, remember that word, pasteurizing, sterilizing, when you're killing all the germs, comes from something like Louis Pasteur. And at one time he was having heavy debates. I think his name is Beauchamp. And Beauchamp was a terrain guy. And he was like, well, you know what? Health has to do with this, your body. That's why if your body is healthy and you're strong, then when you put all these germs around, they don't get sick because they got all their minerals and vitamins. They're not deficient of anything. And then there was Pasteur that said, nah, what's important is that these germs are killing people because look, we could prove it. Well, both is obviously true for somebody that has a brain that could say, well, two things can be true at the same time. You have an immune system, but unfortunately in history, one was much more profitable than the other. As a matter of fact, one is a threat to the other when you're talking about a financial system. So sure, in the new system of things, we're not going to make profit off of war or sickness. Certainly, if people want to sell their goods and do what they do, they're going to do what they do. But we can change a few things, like things that are made for obsolescence, things that should be fine taxed and subsidized. Should we subsidize healthcare to the WHO, to the IHME, whatever it is, that there's plenty of books about problems and Bill Gates and philanthropy being used to, a lot of people don't like the RFKs that he wrote a book about that, how many people Bill Gates has killed, how many children, but I ain't even really on that shit. I'm really the opposite, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really worried about what other people do, you see, because when I think about the dead people at war, I go like this. Like seriously understanding that there's always been war and death. As a matter of fact, 100% of people, from my understanding, that was around 200 years ago, they're dead now. Now, that's debatable. I don't know that. There could be people that's 1,000 years old. Especially when families are close together. And this is another topic, but when people would raise children, sometimes they would be with that child. They'd be together every day. They would do their trade together, and they would have guilds. So before the standardization of medicine and the standardization of Standard Oil and the standardization of things in the past few hundred years, we had beautiful architecture in the 1700s. And before that, for thousands of years, we had that. So when you have that kind of bond with your child, y'all will be sharing the brains, and they would be your same name. So your name will go on, but you'd be almost undeniably similar, just as with biology or something, when your neurons are firing together and they're wiring together, Now, have you heard about that? Your neurons, So biological coping, that's the lesson for today. Your biological coping. What is creating dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin? When you're close to somebody, when you have somebody says the things, if you hug so many people a day, I find you could just rub right here sometimes. Boom, boom, boom. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. And what you're doing is you're doing something positive for yourself. You're showing yourself some love. And that's what you need to do. Make love to yourself, okay? Making love don't mean what a lot of you thinking it means. It don't mean nothing. It means, okay, tapping yourself like this. Not hard. Of course, do everything gentle and check with your doctor and everything like that. Make sure that you're healthy to do tapping. Okay? But you're pushing on all of your body parts. Okay? And we can get into detail about this at another time. We have specific nods. When I point here, I wasn't just doing nothing. I do my whole side. You got your temple, you got these bloods, you got your neck flows. Okay. And a lot of this just positioning. You actually make everything strong, and you could be intentional, and that's what's gonna reverse these things. Like I said, they're trying to stop us from our pursuit of happiness and our free speech, but it's unalienable, which means we're going to do it anyway. So we're still going to communicate, and we're going to find a way, and we're going to do it the right way, because we're creating paradise, and we're being stultified. And it's the murder and kill. It's the murder and kill. I love you still.